Hey everybody, welcome to Tavern Talks. I am your wonderful host and tavern keeper for the evening, and once again we bring a new guest to the tavern. Tonight I have not one, but two guests, which is great. It catches up on some of those moments where I have missed a week, but actually it doesn't. Anyway, besides that, I have Griffin and Todd from the Laughing Moon RPG. I noticed their booth. I met them at GaryCon, and I got very curious about this Laughing Moon RPG. So I asked them to come join us and have a little bit of a chat with it. So if you can hear, just make sure that somebody inside chat, if you can just let me know that you're getting through with the audio feed, that gives us that heads up. So I'm not just sitting here talking and nobody can hear me. Yeah. So before, I like to ask three questions. My first question, of course, is when did you actually start getting into the... I wouldn't say the TTRPG industry because that's a completely different scenario.
Sure.
But when did you actually start getting into TTRPGs?
For me, I think I played my first game of D&D while I was laid up in bed with a broken leg in 8th grade. I had a couple of buddies that decided to come over and entertain me, and I was hooked after that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was a long time ago for me.
Yeah, I can feel that. Yeah, mine was high school, so I feel that. What was the first one that you started with?
For me, it was D&D.
For me, however, I've only ever played Laughing Moon, and I've been playing for just over 6 years.
Okay.
Pretty seriously, I've played a lot of Laughing Moon games, that's for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's see if I can get... I'm noticing one thing real quick. So let me do a quick adjustment to our screen so I can get... Looks like I've got one person sized in and one person not. Let me fix that problem. There you go. Yep. Perfect. That worked.
All right.
Just scoot it over a little bit.
I can do that.
We can squeeze in if we need
get closer.
to.
All right. Yeah, so Laughing Moon is kind of where you started, which is interesting. So what is... since this is your setting, is it just the setting, or have you completely created all new mechanics as well?
That's a great question, and I get that question often. So it started as a setting, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. I had a unique setting, and like every other homebrew out there, we just sort of picked and stole whatever rules we liked and ditched whatever rules we didn't like. That worked, through college. But once I started to get serious about it, and then once I started to work on the novels, the magic system, the clerical system, priests and magic users, it just didn't fit into D&D anymore. And there were just enough unique aspects of the Laughing Moon setting that really made me buckle down and develop a whole new system to support that. But that being said, it's not dependent on the system. In other words, if you're just married to D&D, you could completely adapt Laughing Moon to D&D or pretty much any rule system for that matter. But for those people that were kind of coming off the novels and were familiar with how magic worked or how priestly powers worked and other aspects as well, I really wanted to make sure that I had a gaming system that would support that level of immersion.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
And I didn't reinvent the wheel because it's already rolling really well, but it is definitely unique enough that I'm pretty proud of how it turned out after a lot of work and a lot of time.
At conventions, it's fun talking with different people after they've played one of the games because they're like, I love this mechanic of Bandu, which is actually something my shirt says, which is a Laughing Moon word, which means fate and your ability to affect it.
To alter it or cheat fate to your advantage in the game.
And that's a key mechanic in the game. So
right.
That's a fun one to hear come up.
So yeah, we definitely do have a unique rules system to support the game itself.
Okay. Any specific rules that you've really enjoyed developing outside of the normal just changing magic up? Because like you were saying, the fate system.
Griffin really kind of touched on it already. I'll back up to answer your question with a little bit of a really short story.
Of course.
So when I first developed, when I first launched what would eventually, I guess, just be the first edition of the RPG, I had studied, game design. I'd gone into it. I felt like I'd done my homework, but ultimately, looking back, I didn't know what I was doing, and I figured that out, as we went along. But locally here in the Southwest, I would get invited often to set in on game design panels with a couple of, other very cool game designers that had a lot to offer. One of which is a guy named John Wick. Not that John Wick, the RPG John Wick. He's developed a number of systems out there. He's got a ton of games under his belt.
I have a funny story with that man because I didn't know who he was.
Oh yeah, okay. I think a lot of people do. He's a good guy, and we've traveled in the same circles now for about 15 years. But on the panel, as always, somebody asked about their game and how to publish their game and what to do with it. And John asked a very simple question. He said, "What is your game about?" And the guy began this long explanation of, well, it's a character-based system that's highly narrative. And John stopped him and he said, no. What is the game about? Oh, well, you create a character and no. What is it about? And I'd caught on to where John was going with this, and I started to panic because I realized I did not have an answer for that. John, at that point, was developing a zombie game where the characters is a survival game, but ultimately the game was about movement. One word answer, very simple. How to get my character from point A to point B. It's about movement. The zombies, the dice, the characters, everything else is just the dressing that goes into that.
Got it.
So I started to ask myself, oh my God, what is my game about? So I went back to all of our tables that were being run and I stopped the games. And I said, all right, all my game masters, come over here. Let's sit down. We're going to powwow this for a minute. And the answer was obvious. My game is about fate. Specifically, how do you manipulate fate to your advantage? And in Laughing Moon, we have a word called Bandu. Bandu means fate and your ability to manipulate fate in whatever way is going to best, serve you. So, having that answer at last, when I reworked the game book in the last few years, fate and specifically Bandu was at the heart of all of that. So that mechanic became extremely important. It allows players. It's a lot of fun because on the surface, it allows players to cheat the dice.
Okay.
You can alter the dice rolls, your dice as a player, or you can alter the game master's dice as well, which can be extremely frustrating, but a whole lot of fun. But it also plays into sort of a luck advantage in the game, and it's also how you level up. So, that became the core unique mechanic for Laughing Moon that really started to set us apart from other games that were being played.
It's interesting. Like you said, I like the idea that you're like at the baseline, it's just adjusting the dice, right? But then you start adding these extra layers to it. So now you've got the ability to change up things within the story themselves. And I'm really curious how you use fate to level, because that seems interesting all on its own.
It's a pretty cool idea, I think. The idea is that at the beginning of every session, you're able to roll for Bandu. And you cap it at 25 points.
This was fine-tuned, by the way.
It was, because certain people during a couple of years of playtesting learned how to completely break the game. And she would sit here with 80 Bandu points, so she can literally re-roll or have she can alter almost any dice at the table.
Ooh.
Constantly altering the deal.
Yeah. And it just unbalanced the game. So we figured out 25 kind of that worked to be like our magic number, I guess. And with 25 points, they were able to have actions in combat, that's the first thing that you're able to use it for. Alter specific dice rolls, whether it's to hit, damage that you're doing on a bad guy, or damage you might be taking from a bad guy.
Taking less damage, you can knock it down with your Bandu.
Anything like that at all, you were able to adjust. But ultimately, at the end of a session, any Bandu points that you had left over, you were able to up your skill and attribute points. So it sort of became, its own currency system that, as you're playing, I love the idea of checks and balances, because I've got these 25 points. I want to be able to do, perform actions in combat, because I don't want to just sit here bored.
Right.
And I want to be a useful member of the party. But at a certain point, if I'm adjusting every dice roll, I'm going to whittle out those Bandu points down to 0, allowing me to perform virtually no actions and eliminating any chance of advancement. So it really did force players to think ahead. And I like that.
Not be too spendy up front, too.
Yeah. So you can conserve your Bandu points, hold on to those, level up. And of course, they do carry over to the next game as well.
Okay.
So, it's definitely its own economy, I think, in the game.
Have you had the opportunity to find out if over a longer played game, if giving the ability for them to grow faster is dangerous, or have you seen?
So the way that Laughing Moon works, it is very much designed to be a narrative-based system, and it's very character-driven. So you've got a set of attributes and skills you might start off with as a character. So you've got sort of your basic list of strength, agility, luck, and all this stuff, fortitude, whatever. But those all cap out at 5. So at a certain point, your character is going to be maxed out, I guess.
Right.
But the fun thing with Laughing Moon is that I don't have a list of skills. You do as a player. So if you come to me with a character idea, we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to try to empower the players as much as I can to create a very unique, specific character to you, someone that you want to play. And you might have ideas for skills that I would have never thought of. So in other words, the level up system doesn't really create godlike characters.
Right.
It creates very, very well-rounded characters with a multitude of skills that allow them to perform unique actions.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
No, it does. 100%.
And it's up to the players to elevate their characters. Something that I kind of find fun is playing a character who struggles with rolls more. I don't know. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, but
a little bit.
I roll a ton of ones. So on top of that, to not have like maxed out stats, some of my buddies were always giving me crap about that, and I think it's accurate for her character. I'm like, I don't think she'd be super powerful. She's not in the gym lifting.
And that's another thing too that
it makes sense.
We've seen with a lot of our veteran character players is that they're in it for the story, either their own personal story or the group story or whatever that might be. So it's not so much a race to level up to maximum scores. It's more about the breadth of the character itself.
Right.
And what I can do in his world with that character.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It really is it's a different type of approach, and it might not be for every gamer. Right. I don't know that if you're in it to win it, Laughing Moon is not for you. If you're in it to explore and develop a story and to be a part of that sort of expansive growth that a lot of campaigns experience over time, this is designed for that kind of thoughtful long-term player.
Oh yeah. Which is interesting though, because I met you guys at a convention where you were running one shot. So I'm curious how that transitions with the fact of this. So
one shots. So our convention approach
has a different beast.
Yeah, it is. It's a different beast, and it's evolved significantly over time.
Oh, I bet.
One of my favorite things to do at certain conventions, and it really is sort of dependent on where we are and the crowd that we're going to be, playing with. But I would love to start, on a Friday night, we start with game 1. Saturday, we might have 2 games, and then Sunday, a great big finale. all of those games are connected to each other. So if you're experiencing game one, maybe you can come back on Sunday and see how everything, plays out at the end.
Nice.
But lately we have been sort of doing a more one-shot approach, which isn't really they've got pre-rolled characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a player coming in with their own specific character.
Right.
It's more about exposing them to the system and the world and hoping that they're going to want to develop their own character afterwards.
Which they always do.
Which they always do. Hey, there it is.
Well, often.
No, and I get lucky this year because this will be the first year where I get to kind of do what you were talking about before, where at Gen Con this year, I'll be playing a 3-game adventure for people. So I'll be running
Well, that's fine.
Friday night, Saturday, or Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, the same 6 players through an entire adventure, which is going to be a lot of fun. So
I love getting dedicated players like that are willing to, offer up that time because
time and for Gen Con, I was privileged because when somebody told me, they're like, yeah, we're charging for this. I was like, okay, cool.
Cool.
Hey.
But yeah, no, I work with a company out of Colorado called Gooey Cube. I'm sure you guys have seen them all over, especially at GaryCon, because of everything that was going on there. But yeah, I'll be running one of their adventures, but it's their long-form adventure.
Fun.
So yeah.
Well, good luck with that. I hope it goes great.
I've been building terrain for the last, I have been getting terrain commissioned for me for the last 2 months. So trying to get it all taken care of.
I was about to ask you. I was like, oh, you're creative with your hands. Commission.
Nope. I have an amazing artist out of Connecticut that takes care of. I literally sent him the map and I said, I need this put into 3D format. What are we gonna work out for price? And he's working on it. We've got about 14
Let the professional do it.
So he painted, created. I've got an example right here of just room 1. So I mean, he did a very incredible job.
That was fantastic.
And that comes with all the dressings that'll go inside it, the monsters, everything. So yeah,
awesome.
I couldn't
very cool.
Better teammate. So I guess the next question I would like to ask then is, did you start as a game master or did you start? Oh no, you just said you started as a player when you were 8th. When did you pick up the mantle for game master?
Very early on. I'm one of those, eternal game masters. It's just my nature. I've been a storyteller all my life. And as much as I enjoy, participating in other games, I like being the person developing the overall story and then seeing where my players take it. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I think really for me, I got serious about storytelling and game mastering in early college.
Okay.
So that was 93 for me, and I just never looked back.
Nice. No, I mean, I kind of am in the same boat. College, I started game mastering a little bit, and then I started really getting heavy into game mastering shortly after I got in the military, and then that was my lead for that. So, but yeah. 10 years.
Yeah, once it gets in your blood, it's hard to shake it. That's for sure.
It is. And then you keep buying books and you keep getting new ideas, and you're like, oh, what next can I weave into this story?
Right.
One of the coolest things I've experienced as a game master, I'm curious if you've done the same thing, is even if you don't tell the players any ideas for their backstories, for some reason they all still can be weaved together pretty easily for some weird, strange reason, and I don't understand it. But I'd be curious if you've had that same experience.
I love that. I realized when I started working on the newer version of the game book, which we launched last year.
Okay.
One of the things that was very important to me as I was reworking the book and rewriting basically everything, I wanted to make sure that I was addressing everybody as a creative, because when you're gaming, I think the tendency is that everyone looks to the game master as the storyteller, and that is so not true. It's a fallacy of the occupation itself. Every single person at the table is a storyteller.
Correct.
So finding ways to tap into that creativity, it enriches the table, it enriches the overall story, and also each individual backstories start to, like you said, connect together.
Yeah.
I've got a for those times that it doesn't work, or for those times that we just need it to pick up and happen quickly, like at a convention, I do a thing that we start with. It's a lot of fun where I'll look at a player and say, okay, last time we were at the tavern, well, you remember meeting Marique over here because remember you guys had just picked up and then Griffin will pick up the
three
narrative.
orphan children we have to save.
So now the 3 orphan children have been tossed into the backstory and the player has to run with that. Oh, the 3 orphans. Yeah, that's right. We brought them into the tavern and then that goblin that was hunting them showed up. And I'll point to another player and say, and you remember because you're the one who brought out and they'll fill in the blank. And suddenly everyone's telling a story. All the backstories are connected. And we've got a unified group to start with.
Yeah,
and
I love the idea of starting the story with everybody already kind of having that connection. I don't know why. I just think it works so much better in my opinion. I don't do it all the time, but when I have the opportunity to sit down and I can be like, no, y'all have started the world already. Like you're already together. You already have a connection because then there's already that bind, that tie,
that teamwork.
Yep.
That teamwork. Yep, the first part of it, right? So you don't have to worry about everybody rallying in the tavern and then being like, okay, I have no idea who you are, but we're all going to go on this adventure together. Like,
let's definitely risk our lives together.
Well,
let's do that.
And occasionally, if you've game mastered at conventions for any length of time at all, everybody knows about that guy. And I've been pretty lucky not to have a whole lot of that guys at the table, but by kicking it off where, first of all, you're encouraging storytelling. Mm-hmm. You're kind of putting people on the spot, which might be a little awkward for certain players, but generally people will jump on board and they'll start with oh yeah, I remember last time I was at the tavern, I did this. And suddenly, no matter what backstory individuals had hoped to bring to the table, everybody's unified and on the same front. Mm-hmm. And I think that alleviates a lot of, awkwardness down the road or character or players that might want to veer off and go left when everyone else is going right.
Right. So you've been doing this for been writing for over 30 years from what I think I saw on your webpage. Is that what I think I saw?
Something like that.
No, I'm not saying that to be rude or anything. I'm saying that because...
not. I'm just hearing it that way. Because, I turned 50 this year, and I think that's a big... I don't know. It's a big number, and you start to look backwards as well as looking forwards at that point. And it's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it. I don't know what it's supposed to feel like, but here we are.
Right. If you've been able to make it into a lifestyle, I can't say it's been a bad life at that point. If you're telling stories your entire time,
I'm not complaining.
Wouldn't complain. Yeah. What I'm curious though now is that you're saying, Griffin, you're saying you've only been playing for 6. So what got you into all this?
Well, stumbling across Laughing Moon, I'm an avid reader first and foremost. So
she's the biggest nerd you would ever meet.
I was a bookworm first and foremost.
Star Trek nerd, Star Wars nerd, fantasy nerd.
So getting my hands on the books and then finding out that it was something I could be a part of and bring to life. I knew what Dungeons and Dragons was. I'd done many conventions back in Michigan. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
But I hadn't considered creating my own character and dressing up as that. That's totally new. Right. Here I was doing someone else's character. Silly me.
Well, Griffin has been exposed to D&D and actually in a really cool way. There's a local radio station in Phoenix. Okay. It's the rock station, KUPD out here, and one of their main DJs, his name's Fitz. He's a huge D&D guy. He's been playing it since he was a kid, and about 5 years or so ago, Fitz started doing D&D nights at the radio station, and Griffin had done a photo shoot. Actually, she had done several photo shoots with the station, and they invited her to come down and host the game. And that was incredibly cool because she got exposed to D&D that way, but she also got exposed to the local D&D community, which,
who I keep up with, on the socials.
There's so many great players out there that we both got to meet and, play some games with. And it's just really cool getting plugged into the community and really seeing Griffin grow like that. It was neat. It was really cool.
It is awesome. It sounds like it was a great experience that has now grown into all of this, right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So, and now you're able to not only show off, your skills in D&D, but you can now bring these characters to life in all sorts of ways, which is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
Cosplaying for years, but never thought, I'm going to do my own character for once. Like, no, I just didn't think about it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, here I was buying costumes, and I mean, I still buy and commission them
costume,
because I
right.
can't sew to save my life. But but it's my concepts, my ideas that I bring forward when I create a look for a character.
That's awesome.
It's something that I think definitely sets Griffin apart from a lot of other cosplayers that are out there on the scene. You see a ton of familiar characters out on the convention floor, but what's cool about Griffin is that if she's in costume, this is a character that she has created. It's her own, and that's been a lot of fun for us because we're able to work together with bringing the character first of all to the table, and then bringing it to life visually, and then bringing that character to a convention floor.
Right.
That becomes a conversation with people that might not know Laughing Moon.
Yep.
And suddenly here's this kick-ass dark angel standing in our booth, and naturally they're going to ask the question, well, who are you?
Right.
And that gives Griffin the opportunity to start chatting about who she is and what she does.
Yeah. So the character that we have on that's flashing through on the screen right now, who is that character?
Yes. So her name is Marique. She is a blackbird, which is a sector of Todd's.
It's a religious sect.
Okay.
That they worship this sort of faceless, nameless god or collection of gods, which they call the On High.
Okay.
Some can be quite fanatic. Others can just be a helpful lending wing, hand. Bad joke. The black feathers.
Terrible joke.
Terrible. Okay. I'm also known for my terrible jokes. My terrible jokes and my ones. But
terrible jokes are a one.
And funnily enough, when you roll a 1 in Laughing Moon, you owe him a bandu. So I'm kind of like passing one over.
Yeah.
But she's a really cool character that's changed specifically because of the roles I've made during games.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, I had envisioned her to be this hero, this savior, to go out there and spread the good word kind of thing. And it was bizarre how many times I ended up ruining the story.
So Griffin says ruining the story. Something that I do that might be different, I honestly wouldn't know. In games, everything is canon. So I like to say that I've been running one game since 1996 is when I really started to form Laughing Moon. And everything that's happened at my table is considered canon. It's a part of the story. So with Griffin in particular, she's not kidding. She's really not even exaggerating. She's rolled a 1 on a number of occasions with that particular character, Marique. And the outcome of those critical failures have been literally world altering.
Oh, wow.
She's accidentally resurrected this horrible bad guy at one point. She's brought magical items into play that should never have been in existence.
That then got
stolen
from me, to be
So,
fair.
No.
I mean, we had these epic moments at the table that were able then to translate into the overall game, which, in my opinion, only enriched things even more.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I don't believe in failures at the table. Every single dice roll, win, lose, or draw, it's a storytelling opportunity. And it's hard not to get deflated when that happens, especially if you had something in mind. But
there have been times where that has really happened, where I'm defeated. I feel like I've lost. Todd reminds me, it's not about winning.
But the trick with the dice at our table is if you roll a 20, a critical hit, I will do my storytelling best to give you the cinematic Hollywood limelight moment where, to be something epic and awesome. But if you roll a 1, the narrative shifts to you. And the player has to describe to me what's the consequence of that failure, what happens.
I like that.
And Griffin in particular has, on occasion, really just taken that narrative and run with it to disastrous consequences, but from a storytelling perspective, it was awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I've had the opportunity this year to run with some very incredible, game masters and players, and I love the idea of just giving them that narrative of, hey, you
So
messed
much fun.
up. What happens?
What happened? Yeah.
I don't know if they'll allow me to do that on stream, but I might have to test it here or there. So
Yeah.
it's not my stream, so I can't technically say that was gonna go well.
Right.
So, but yeah, we might play around with that a little bit. I like that a lot. And I know we have a couple other game masters that are sitting in chat right now that I'm sure
Cool.
are taking notes on certain things.
Take little bits, yeah.
Oh, I love this. This is one of my favorite shows because this is what I do. Like, I grab and I'm like, oh, look, this guest has done this. This guest has done this, and just continue to build the.
Every artist
the
is a
kid.
cannibal. Every poet is a thief.
Yep, pretty much. So let's see. What else can we talk about tonight? We talked about the mechanic that just makes your system unique. We've talked about how characters are blended. What is so Laughing Moon is the RPG. What is the setting? Like the actual, like, what type of, are we talking a continent? Are you talking an entire world? Multiple worlds? How far have you gotten yet?
Well, yeah, we got a map behind us. I don't think it's going to show very well, but so as with so many questions, I have a complicated answer. But
you wouldn't be a storyteller if you didn't, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's true. But this is definitely what sets Laughing Moon apart, I think, from traditional RPG settings. First and foremost, I'm an author. I've been writing all my life, publishing stories from a young age, and writing books is what I'd always wanted to do. So, I started the Laughing Moon Chronicles as a series of books that we had a homebrew game system for, that we would just play for fun. And then we would use that homebrew, cobbled together system at conventions, really at that point, just simply to market the novels. But the novels are set in what is now sort of the second age of Mithrin, which is the world of, under the Laughing Moon. And it's sort of a traditional Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Dragonlance style setting.
Okay.
It is the world, not just a continent. But there, all the story itself is very much focused in one particular area. Now, the RPG takes things and moves it forward a great distance to where there's been an apocalyptic event. They call it the breaking of the moon, where the moon was shattered. All that's left is this sickle shape, which is a very prominent symbol in Laughing Moon. Mm-hmm. And the world itself was utterly shattered and then dreamed back into existence.
Okay. So
the world that we game in is sort of a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting.
It's very fragmented and broken.
It is. It's all broken up. Pieces of the old world are still here, but not a lot of people, like the gods, are either dead or they've fled. So you, instead of having, priests that are worshiping specific deities, you've got the blackbirds of the on high that worship this, mysterious group of deities or immortals that they don't even know who they are.
Magic, all of that is much harder to come by in this current age that we're playing in.
Right.
So that affects both the game master throughout his stories and then the characters too.
Yeah. So I really, when I relaunched the RPG, it was important to me to really, I don't know.
I like the give and take of like spellcasting.
Yeah, but I wanted the world itself to be different. It needed. I had stepped away from the scene for several years. Pretty much had kind of figured Laughing Moon for me was done. I was ready to just put it away, and if I went back to it, it would just be on a very personal basis. But I just couldn't shake it. I had that itch. I just, this is my longest relationship in my life.
Yeah.
And it's something I truly do love, and I'm very proud of. But when I brought Laughing Moon back to the public, it needed to be different. It needed to be fresh and new. And I didn't want it, to look like everything else. With the advent or the rise of Critical Role and the popularity of D&D with things like Stranger Things coming into play, suddenly it's a household name, and everyone thinks they know what Dungeons and Dragons is. So I wasn't comfortable just recycling what they might have already seen on Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
I needed and wanted this to be something unique and its own thing that people would very easily, once they've played, say, wow, okay, that was different, and I liked that.
Right.
So I had to blow up the world and recreate it to get there, but
right.
It's been a lot of fun with the setting that we've got. It definitely offers a whole new taste to fantasy RPGs, I think.
Yeah. So for people that are interested in getting a hold of this or whatnot, what are they getting when they get their books? Because I know this is a big question I like to ask for people, because D&D just gives you a book. Some things give you books, posters, all these crazy extras. Some there's this mix in between. When somebody comes and says, "Hey, I want the Laughing Moon RPG," what are they receiving?
So, all right,
One-stop shop.
This is it. This is my copy, so it's a little bit battered and bruised.
Bring a little closer.
But
look at that, awesome.
So I reworked this book in 2020 during COVID. I really got serious, and at first it was just for me. I needed to do this,
Mm-hmm.
but as I started to rework it, I started to go back into some of my oldest notes that I could find, which dated all the way back to college. I had pages, hundreds of pages of notes and deep lore and history and gods and magic and all this stuff. Back in college, my friends called it the Todd Marillion. This was my, my Tolkien version of everything. So at first I thought, okay, you know what? I'll have a book of priestly powers. I'll have a book of magic. I'll have a book with the lore. And then I thought, you know what? No, I hate the idea of nickel and diming people that might be interested in what I do. So this book has literally everything. It has everything in it. It's got deep history. It breaks down all 3 ages of Laughing Moon, character types, tons and tons of artwork, most of which we commissioned. Other stuff we just licensed out. It's got obviously the game system itself. It's got a monster manual in the back. It's got every spell that I've ever come up with. It's got all the priestly powers. In other words, if you want to play Laughing Moon, this book it's a one-stop shop.
One-stop shop.
I wanted to provide everything game masters or players would ever want or need right here.
Awesome.
And of course, if they wanted to expand on that, well, you can read the novels and, get a feel for the setting and the characters that exist there. As far as the RPG goes, this is everything.
Awesome. No, that's perfect. Because I think that's kind of one of the things that we see a lot is you've either got somebody's trying to build 3-4 books at a time for their new world,
right?
And then you've got similar to yours where it's a one book shop. It's everybody get everything, and
as a player, I prefer that personally.
Well,
but...
I mean, I'm a speck on the radar. There's so many great games that are out there, and D&D it's the mothership that's there, and it's got a lot of people under that.
Yeah.
If somebody is willing to, give me their time to play and then give me their money for the book,
mm-hmm.
the last thing I want them to do is feel like they got ripped off or that I'm, it's a bait and switch scenario. I don't make any money off of this thing, really. This thing, it's a passion project for sure. Yeah. I do this out of, I don't know,
respect
love for the craft,
a love for the storytelling itself. And this is my sandbox. And I've been very lucky to have a lot of people in the last, 15 years, especially, that have wanted to play in that sandbox. And if there are people that want to take this book home to their group of players, I want to empower them in any possible way that I can.
That's awesome. No, and I love that because I think that's kind of the one thing. A couple years ago when I first started this stream, I was kind of in that same boat. I was like, oh, can I make money off? Can I do something with this? And then after a while, it just was like, I'm doing this because of two reasons. One, it's a fun way to talk to people, and two, the networking abilities has been incredible. You know,
Mhm.
and I have met so many amazing people within this industry and within this community that I never would have met otherwise. So I'm just
Oh
gonna
my
keep
gosh.
doing it.
Same here. Same here. I mean, I grew up loving fantasy fiction.
Yep,
You know,
same.
Lord of the Rings and Lloyd Alexander and anything I could get my hands
Mhm.
on. You know, Dragonlance became a really big thing for me in high school.
Yeah.
And I think, like so many other fantasy readers, you know, in that era, I fell in love with the artwork. You know,
Mhm.
the Dragonlance book covers, just there was something so captivating about those characters. You know,
I
studying
got the
Raceland.
honor. I know you did.
Yeah,
You guys did as well. But we got the honor to meet Larry Elmore at GaryCon this year, and I was like, I was walking back
we
into
uh
my my childhood right there. So
we befriended
We have
Larry
many
out
great
here
Larry
in
stories.
Tempe back in
okay.
2017, 2018, something like that. And we became friends with him, which blew my mind.
Oh
Just
yeah,
blew my
I
mind.
bet.
We met up with him again in LA, took him to dinner,
Oh,
spent the whole day with him. This was right before COVID.
mm,
Um, and then we didn't see him again until GaryCon this last year, which wound up being Larry's last
Last
convention.
yeah.
convention.
So it was extremely bittersweet. Hugging him goodbye that last night.
Mm,
I mean, I walked away with tears. I literally, this was a man whose work inspired me so deeply. Um, you know, I don't even have words for that really,
yeah, they
but
had the.
I've got every book that he's ever produced with all of his artwork.
Mhm.
My walls are covered in Larry Elmore art, and to actually meet him and listen to his stories, and then I don't know, it was an unforgettable
Oh
experience, that's
yeah,
for sure.
GaryCon this year
Yeah,
was the first GaryCon I'd ever been to,
same here.
and it
Yeah,
was such an amazing experience. Um,
That was
it blew
beautiful.
my mind. Uh, let's see here.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was the first one for both of us, and hopefully not the last.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it
no,
really did feel
it was
The
enchanting.
whole experience from the hotel to the games and the
everything.
guests, yeah,
Yeah.
it was magical. It really, I cannot speak highly enough about the convention itself or Luke and his family. I mean, it was
Mhm.
just absolutely
Yeah,
spectacular.
like I said, I go to about 3 or 4 a year, and that is definitely now a must go to every
Yeah,
year
Must,
because it was
yeah.
so much
that's what I've been
fun.
telling all of our veteran players over here. They're
What's
just,
that?
I want to get a whole bunch of us to just fly
yeah,
out together.
and
That'd be
we
awesome.
might.
That'd be great. Yeah. Um, yeah, that was it. That was an experience that I had not, because I normally go to my first convention as a player, and then I decide if I want to run games that next year. I don't know if I want to run games at CarryCon because there's so much to like, so many people that I just got to spend
We talked
time
about the
with
same thing.
and
Yeah, that was
enjoyed. Just it was surreal. So
that was definitely a conversation we had because we ran I think 3 or 4 games total,
Yeah.
and each one was a great experience. We had
hmm
really fun players, some of
Totally
which
different
were,
outcome.
yeah. I actually ran the exact same adventure, which is something I don't normally do.
right.
I ran the same adventure at every session, but you'd never know it because the players would take it in completely different directions.
Right.
But um, you know, it's still a 4 hour chunk. And at the end of it, you're like, oh man, I missed Stefan Picorni doing his thing, or
Right.
this game
Yeah.
here, or
Right.
whoever. And so
Yeah.
it's a tough call to
It really
whether or
is.
not game or not to game.
Yeah, I was asked to do the same thing if everything goes well with Gen Con, and I'm sure it's going to, but because we put so much time and effort into the train and everything,
Yeah,
they asked me to do the same thing at GaryCon this year, and I was like, I don't know about with GaryCon. Maybe I'll go to 2 or 3 other conventions, but
yeah,
GaryCon it might just be my player con that I just go and
yeah.
experience and have a good time.
Well, if we run a game
Yeah.
and you're free, we've absolutely got to
Oh,
get
I
you on
love
a
it.
table.
Love to have it.
Yeah,
My next one is Gen Con, like I said, and then I'm out at
right.
Genghis in February. So
Fun.
if you've ever had a chance to go to that one, that's kind of about this. It's a little smaller than GaryCon, but throughout the years they've been bringing more and more very known, very well. Um,
Where is this one located?
Genghis Khan.
that is in Aurora. Colorado. So
Okay.
right there outside of Denver.
I've never been to it, so
Yeah.
it'll slip my mind.
So they're running at the end of the month, or at the end of next month, they have a BattleTech like wargaming one that they do called Tacticon, and then in February they do the full blown TTRPG base. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'll be there again because it's technically Gooey Cube's like home convention, so that's why I'll be out there.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
and we take over the place, so it's great. We do.
That's
The
awesome.
amount of Gooey Cube community people, I'm not even surprised. It grows every year, which is just a lot of fun.
That's cool. Yeah, it's what you want.
Yeah. Any questions? Anything you want to share with the audience? Anything?
I love this.
I don't know if the audience has any questions. I'd love to field anything they've got.
Secret Child said, "I needed to blow up the world." A relatable statement. Sometimes a story needs to be broken before it can be fully told.
Yeah. Well, art imitates life, and life imitates art, and I think the destruction of Laughing Moon, and then the sort of phoenix aspect of rising from the ashes, was definitely it was very personal for me, just with what I was going through in my personal life at the time, and all that, it either influences or drives creativity as well. So that was blowing up the world was a necessary component to allowing it to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that even as people, we sort of have to deconstruct who we are in an effort to, figure out what really matters at a certain point, and then to move forward.
Our truest version.
Yeah, and I think Laughing Moon has certainly found its truer version now because of that.
That's awesome. That's a great way.
Yeah,
great way to kind of wrap up the interview, because like that's truly the thing is that we as creators we sometimes hit those roadblocks, and it's something that it absolutely has to be over and abound before we can rebuild, and that's just an awesome way to see it. If anybody in the chat does have questions, make sure you pop those in there, and go check out their website, laughingmoonrpg.com. Check out all the novels, the TTRPG itself. Once again, thank you guys for coming to hang out with us tonight.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, and I appreciate that. Feel free. We're trying to gather. Really, the main focus of what this has always been about is to bring guests on to share their stories. And we do it in three ways. We do character-driven stories, we do world-driven stories, and then we do project-driven stories. Lately, it's been projects because people just want to share their passions, which I'm perfectly happy with.
I have all of them.
But I will say, if you want to return in another episode where you would like to walk through in what we call the tour guide, where I play an absolute idiot who has no idea where I'm landing in the world, and I plant myself somewhere in your world as you tell me where to go, and I look left and right, and you walk me through as if I'm walking through as a tour guide.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
And the other one, of course, is our Tavern Talk, which is actually what we do is we start in your world. And when you walk through a precipice doorway, you enter my tavern. And I talk, and the only way you can buy anything in the tavern is with a tale. So you have to tell tales in order to get a drink, in order to eat, in order to sleep, and in order to leave. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's really told people, and it's kind of this banter back and forth of a very old tavern keeper who has lost age, lost name, and he just asks questions until we can get into the deeper portions of the character. And it's been a lot of fun. So
sounds like a toddler. Why? Why?
It's a Tavern Talks.
It's a Tavern Talks.
I appreciate that. I don't have my drink on me right now, but I do have my cup.
Oh, hey. Well, virtual cheers.
Virtual cheers. I normally have my tavern cup. It's in the other room with the kids, but in the kitchen. So, but thank you once again for coming. It looks like we've got no other questions tonight. Of course, go check these guys them out over on the Laughing Moon RPG. Make sure you keep an eye on all their conventions that they've got coming up. I'm sure you've got a bunch, and they can see this amazing tavern behind them.
Yeah.
That is a passion now, and an idea that I need my own tavern tarp so that I can put it up whenever I want to, because that's fantastic.
We had a tarp at one point, but I can kind of show.
Yeah.
We just decided our best friend can actually build stuff. So
Oh my.
So
all those are just
actually,
separate pieces on the,
yeah,
on the
they're
wall? Oh my
it's
goodness.
kind of an L-shaped wall that he constructed with a really cool means of like fastening this thing together.
Yeah.
His whole construction idea was just freaking genius, to be honest. And then we just decorated it with, in like unique Laughing Moon art, and then a lot of WizKids stuff that we picked up.
Yeah, I can see the very well
Gotta
off
love that.
items like the beholder and the dragon.
Oh yeah, I'm a sucker for that
nerdy
stuff.
shit.
Nerdy shit. Yep.
Yep.
Anyway, but this, of course, is
Thank you
Tavern
for
Talks. I hope you all enjoyed our time tonight. Come back next week for another guest as we continue our tales all the way up until. Let's see. I've got two more till Gen Con, and after that, we'll see. You won't see us for 2 weeks, and then we'll be back with our next set. Right now, we have guests all the way up until August. So, hopefully, y'all will join us next week at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And until then, raise your glasses high. This is Last Call. This is Tavern Talks. Have a wonderful evening.